The newsday continues here on One News Now. I'm Riza Diaz. A witness has described the extent of the deadly stampede in northern Israel as absolutely terrifying. About 90,000 Orthodox Jewish Israelis attended a festival in observance of a religious holiday, resulting in a stampede where 45 people died and over 150 more were injured. According to authorities, this was likely caused by overcrowding. A temporary field hospital was set up to treat the wounded, where a doctor said 2 children have died, while 4 more were severely injured. The stampede is now considered to be Israel's worst disaster in recent years, except for war, prompting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to declare May 2 as a day of national mourning for the victims of the stampede.
מזה אני רואה מלא אנשים צרחות אימים ממש גדולות, והמשטרה ראתה את הצרחות, אבל היא לא הבינה כנראה עד כמה מה הולך שם, חשבו אולי התעלפות או משהו. אבל ככל הנראה מהחסימה של המשטרה אלפי אנשים ירדו, זה ירידה של 360 מעלות, כלומר לא עומדים ישר, עומדים ממש באלכסון. אז כשאלפים נוערים כלפי מטה, קצת לצאת מההדלקה, רקדו שם חצי שעה, רצו לצאת, אז בעצם נוצר מצב של מאות אנשים נפלו אחד על השני, והמראות שראיתי אחר כך, חזרתי גם לפנות את הנפטרים, המראות היו קשים מאוד, והמראות היו מאוד.
Meanwhile, Hong Kong migrant workers criticized plans to require vaccination for all foreign domestic helpers. Hong Kong health officials announced plans to roll out mandatory vaccinations for about 370,000 domestic helpers in the city, most of whom come from the Philippines and Indonesia. Those who will apply for work visas or renew current ones will have to show proof that they have been vaccinated. United Filipinos in Hong Kong slammed the move, calling it discriminatory for stigmatizing migrant workers. Other groups of domestic workers were angered as other foreigners and local workers, were not required to get vaccinated. Officials said domestic workers were deemed as high risk because they came from other countries and often gather outdoors in large numbers. Now, here are some of the biggest news across the nation. In Cebu, 20 members of labor group Partido Manggagawa were arrested as they were gearing up for a Labor Day protest yesterday. According to Partido Manggagawa Cebu spokesperson Dennis Derige, 8 miners from Toledo City and 12 fishermen from Talisay were nabbed for alleged violation of quarantine protocols. The workers were released after paying a 500 peso fine. Boracay recorded its worst visitor arrivals last April as Metro Manila residents were barred from traveling due to MECQ. Records from the Malay Tourism Office showed that only around 1,200 tourists visited Boracay from April 1 to 25. Most of these visitors came from Western Visayas. This is a huge decline from March, when the island welcomed 17,400 tourists, the highest since it reopened in October last year. Now, prior to lockdowns, Boracay was seeing over 200,000 tourists in 2019. Local businesses in the island are hoping that Metro Manila will be downgraded to GCQ to welcome more tourists in the area. Zamboanga City once again shut down beaches and other inland resorts and establishments with pools in an effort to curb the surge in COVID-19 cases. This was covered in an executive order issued by Zamboanga City Mayor Maria Isabel Climaco Salazar on Friday night and will be in effect from May 1 to 15. And the government will conduct a pilot run for the rollout of Sputnik V shots using 15,000 doses we received yesterday. According to vaccine czar Carlito Galvez, this trial run will help the government release or eases the country's logistic capability in handling highly sensitive vaccines. He added that Russia advised the country to try to handle a small volume of the Gamaleya shots first due to the vaccine's strict handling and storage requirements. The vaccine czar also confirmed that the initial batches of Sputnik V vaccines will be deployed in the National Capital Region as well as other economic centers such as Cebu and Davao. A psychiatrist warns health workers in the country are getting burnt out amid rising COVID-19 infections. Speaking to One News Now, Dr. Bernadette Arcena said that health workers are getting over-fatigued due to working long hours. Arcena adds that medical frontliners are also anxious about contracting COVID-19 while on duty. She advised health workers to connect to their loved ones virtually to prevent the feeling of loneliness.
We can say that burnout syndrome is very high in our medical frontliners and those working in the hospital. The long duty time and of course the feeling that you're going to have also the COVID are the fears of our health workers.
A nonprofit organization reports that the pandemic had a greater economic impact on women due to over-representation in the hardest-hit industries. Oxfam America's Mara Bolis explains this on Bloomberg's Quick Take Charge.
We start today with a new report that really caught our attention here in the newsroom. It breaks down the data behind the pandemic's massive economic impact on women due to overrepresentation in industries hardest hit by the crisis. So women around the world lost at least $800 billion in income in 2020, according to estimates by Oxfam International. For reference, that's more than the combined GDP of 98 countries. Globally, women lost more than 64 million jobs last year, a 5% drop compared to the 3.9% loss for men. The report found that women were more likely than men to drop out of the workforce or reduce hours during the pandemic, largely due to care responsibilities. So joining us now to discuss this all is Mara Bolis, Associate Director of Women's Economic Rights, Gender, Justice, and Inclusion Hub for Oxfam America. Mara, thank you so much for joining us on this day when you guys have this report coming out. Talk to us first about this $800 billion figure and how your team got to it.
Well, you know, these are staggering numbers. I mean, can you imagine the equivalent of a combined GDP of 98 countries? And this is a conservative estimate. It doesn't even include the income of hundreds of millions of women who are working in informal employment. So if we were to have been able to capture all of that lost income as well, it just starts to scratch the surface of how much of this income crisis that women are facing around the world.
And Mara, continue.
No, please go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to ask. I imagine Oxfam has conducted this report before. How just drastic is this number compared to sort of previous years that you've taken a look at this?
You know, this is a unique year. It's a year like none other, and I think that the reason for that is the unique role that women play in our economies. So this is actually the first time that we've recorded this specific income, and it's because income loss, and it's because of the coronavirus pandemic. And what we saw in terms of, as you said, women's concentration in terms of affected industries, but really it's women's work on unpaid care. Women do 75% of the world's care work. And as President Biden said on Tuesday night during coronavirus, many women were forced to leave their jobs because they couldn't get the care that they needed for their children or an elderly parent or a sick family member. And we see that in the U.S. so starkly in terms of the unemployment increases, particularly for women of color. And so this is I think it's a year where we've made the invisible visible, right? Women have always been the shock absorbers of our economies, and this really needs to stop now. We need policies that support women's unique needs starting now.
Day is shaping up to be. Join us later again at 12 noon as we monitor the day's biggest stories from sunrise to sundown. You can also catch One News on Signal Play app. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Riza Diaz. Mask on. Wash hands and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.